Welcome to Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast, episode number 173. I am your host, Jeff Halash. This is our live call-in show for computer repair techs. The call-in number is 1-888-697-0162. Computer Repair Podcast is brought to you by Pulse Printing and Promotions. Get help with all your print and promotional needs. Go to pulseprintpromo.com. Use offer code PODNUTS for a 5% discount on every order. Let me introduce the co-hosts. We have Marvin Bee from MB Systems. Marvin, how you doing?
Doing fantastic. Holla, everyone.
Awesome. Good to have you, man. And also joining us, he's kind of subbing for Chris, since Chris isn't going to be here. We have another Canadian, Don Jagoe from MyTechGeeks. How you doing, Don?
Doing fantastic.
Awesome. Great to have you guys on the show. Well, let's see. Let's go ahead and start with a tip or story that we could learn from. Don, you want to go ahead and give us yours?
Sure. Yeah. I just want to tell everyone about this Rapid Spar device. You may or may not have heard about it. It's from Deep Spar, the big data recovery company. Anyway, this little device here is really made more for like the average IT shop, and it goes for $2,000 US. There may be some annual fees on top of that, but basically, if you go to rapidspar.com and check it out, basically it's supposed to recover approximately 50% of all the software-related data recovery issues. So I've been testing it all week, and it's been working great. It recovered some stuff for me that I couldn't recover with DD Rescue and some other different programs. A lot of drives, I just plug it in, it mounts right away, and I'm able to pull the data off pretty quickly. It's a little steep on the cost, but the $2,000 is actually pretty reasonable for this type of equipment. And I may be looking at buying one myself. Just have to justify if I get enough, if I get enough drives in to run it on. But if anyone's interested, there'll be in the show notes. There'll be links there about how you can sign up for a demo for 1 week, so you get to basically try it out and use it for a whole week, and possibly make some money off it. But it's worth a try. Apparently, they have 4 demo units. I got one of the first ones, and like I say, I'm really happy with it.
Awesome. Now that's one of those units where you can put a source drive on there, your bad drive basically, and a destination drive where you're going to put the data, and that's just kind of a pass-through where it takes the information from the bad drive and puts it on the good drive so that you can actually access the data. That's correct. Yeah, the device itself plugs into your USB 3 port on your computer, and this little device here actually has I believe it's a 120 gigabyte Kingston SSD hard drive in it. So it basically, if something goes wrong as it's recovering data, it also has a battery in here. If something goes wrong, it actually temporarily stores what it's recovered on here before it moves it over apparently to your destination drive. But yeah, it's fantastic. I love this little thing so far. So the USB 3 is just basically a power for that device with a battery backup?
It actually has a 12-volt power as well. It's kind of cloud-based software. So it has a little LCD screen that you press the buttons to turn on the source drive and the power to it and that type of thing. But you can actually, on your computer, start like a new recovery process, and you type in all the information about the drive that you're trying to recover, like the model number, the brand, if it's HGST or Seagate or whatever, and if it's a 3.5 or 2.5 inch drive. And from that point, it goes to the cloud, and it looks at other similar cases of other people like us have inputted the data already, and it tries to determine what's wrong with the drive and the best case way of pulling the data off. So so the computer basically acts as a way for it to get to the cloud and for you to input certain data.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But you can also, instead of using the destination drive, you can actually recover it to a USB stick that's plugged into your laptop, for example, as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
A lot of different options.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, check that out. Yep, we'll definitely have those links in the show notes. He already sent those over. All right, Mr. Marvin Bee, what do you have for us this week?
Nothing too major. I just wanted to remind everybody, we talk about it a lot, but one of the things to always remember when you are dealing with your customers is to try to stay on top of everything that would require documentation and anything related to services that you may have to encounter in the future. One of my customers, even though I've had them for years, we had to do a transfer of their domain to a new web host because they had some services that they were going to do, and they get some web redesign, they get some Google Analytics, they get a whole bunch of stuff with traffic generation. And we found out that one of the websites that we needed to move, they had two. One, not a problem. I already had that information. The second one, I went to go look for it, and we knew who it was registered with, but it was not tied to the account that they thought it was. And one of their employees had created a separate account under their username, email, password, and didn't tell anybody. That employee had been gone for a while. So we spent about a week trying to, get the email address back live, try to send in a request to get the account information and do all that. Finally, we ended up getting in touch with everything, but it was just a ridiculous nightmare that we had to go through that. And part of it was the company's fault for not staying on top of stuff. I'll probably take a little bit of responsibility for not, trying to keep on top of it myself, although it's really hard for us because if they do something and don't tell us, we don't know to go looking for it.
Sure. Right.
But it was just, something that really could have been avoided, having to go through all that effort. And it was funny because, to be honest, we thought we had it because we had found 27 domain registrations previous and thought we were good, but under this new account, even though we found the one that we needed, there were actually 8 other domains that the person had made that were redirected and all of that stuff. So we found all of those and got those taken care of.
That's a lot of domains.
That's a lot of domains.
Yeah. And
yeah.
What are they doing with all those domains?
Well, to be honest, they're really not doing anything with them. What they did was they tried to do what they should have done with stuff like AdWords and keywords and their SEO, and they tried to get domains that they thought anybody would ever type in looking for this relatively new procedure in, skin laser care.
Okay.
So they were buying domains for, such and such Fort Lauderdale, such and such Delray, such and such Florida, trying to capture all that traffic. So we're going to let about 35 of those domains expire and not care about them because the new web company is going to do their job right, put in the proper SEO, put in the proper keywords, and make everything work just where it is. And actually, the second domain is actually just going to be a redirect to a landing page on the real domain. So eventually, they'll get down to just their one main domain.
So they didn't realize that people don't search for domains themselves. They just kind of search for terminology that might get something there. And if they had a dead link or a dead domain, it wasn't going anywhere. What good was that going to do then?
I don't know, but this is part of the Google generation, that somebody came into this company thinking that he knew a little bit about tech, and didn't want to have to call me in to do stuff, and just decided he'd do it on his own. And because the practice was kind of split, there's 2 sides to the house, and so the one side was just kind of doing whatever they wanted, getting frustrated when they came to try to do stuff, and they were either blocked on the network or needed admin permissions to do stuff. So this Google generation dude, thought he'd try to do all this on his own.
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah, there's a problem. There's nice things to having old technology and older people with experience, but.
I have one client too that he sells used cars, and he must have 30 to 40 different domains, and he got me to do something for build a website for him, and I had to log into his GoDaddy account, and I said, what in the world are you possibly doing with all these domains? Because none of them are live, right? And he said he just bought them all up so nobody else could buy them, basically. So he's just hanging on to them, right? So, like in the in the area that he's in, if someone does a search with the town name, basically, he's just hanging on to them. But it's expensive, over the years. It's
Sure.
Money.
And it really doesn't do the same thing as SEO, not what people think. They don't know, so it's our job to educate them and go, yeah, this isn't going to help you at all.
No, exactly.
Oh, very cool. Oh, let's see. What do I have going on? I usually write something down, and I forgot this week. It's been a busy week. Just a lot of different things going on. Doing some cleanups on people's computers. We'll get into a couple emails. They're going to talk about Windows 10 a little bit, but yeah, not too much. Just same old, same old. I was telling the guys on a show before we got started. I said, I'll sit there and have people call me, and customers always lie, right? I always just assume that now. My customer's lying. And somebody calls me up and says, I've got an external hard drive, and I need the external hard drive. When I plug it in, it doesn't work anymore. I need the information off the drive. And I'm like, hey, no problem. Let's set up a time. You can drop it off. I'll pull it out of the enclosure, put it in my bench machine, run it, get the stuff off there. Not a big deal. But then he calls back later and says, actually the drive's formatted, and I need to know if you can get the information back. And I'm like, now I go, maybe I can, maybe I can't. I don't know. And so I'll sit there and go, well, what we can do is, I said, if you haven't written anything over the top of it, but again, I don't know if he's going to tell me the truth or not, but if you haven't written anything over the top of it, then, and you just did a format, then the information is probably still there, and yes, we can get it back. But I said, if anything's going wrong with the drive or any of this other type of stuff, I just don't know. And by the time most of us get whatever the problem is into our hands, it's usually something even different than that. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, other than that, just same old, same old. Other than, I get a few people too that will call and say, I've got a laptop that was found in an apartment that has a cracked screen, and obviously we don't have the password, and is there anything you can do with that? Yeah, I can replace the screen. It'll be 129, and I can replace I can reinstall the operating system with factory fresh, settings, and that'll be another 125. Oh, so it'll be about $250. Yep. And I already know. I read these people a mile away, right? They're not going to call back because you can go pick up a cheap laptop anywhere for $300, and it'll probably be better than whatever you found laying somewhere. And plus, the reality is you really don't know what's wrong with that thing.
Yeah.
And speaking of another story, I had a guy call me and said he's got a 7-year-old computer. Came with Windows Vista on it. 7 years old. 6.5, 7 years old.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to him on the phone, and he's like, yeah, he goes, I'm trying to reinstall the operating system. It won't take the key. Well, this was right at the time when you were able to get a Windows 7 upgrade. Okay? So what they would do, this was an HP computer, what they did was they sent him out a Windows 7 upgrade CD. But he had no regular recovery media, so what he was trying to do is use the upgrade CD, which has all the same bits as the OEM retail. It's all the same. Okay, there's just a configuration file that will tell you what sequence of product keys it can run under and what sequence of product keys it can't. Mm-hmm. So basically, he's trying to install this Windows 7 on this 6.5-year-old laptop, or I'm sorry, it was a desktop, 6.5-year-old desktop, because he replaced the drive, and trying to put in the Vista OEM key from HP. And I'm like, yeah, that won't work.
No.
And, again, I told him, I said, to be honest with you, 6.5 years old, I said, depending on what you're doing or what you need that computer for, why don't you just go to the store? You can get a nice desktop that you can probably just throw in your system, and it'll come with a mouse and keyboard for, $300-400, and it'll do you fine for what you need. I said, because it's going to cost you more money to have me try to fix it than it's going to be worth. So, yeah, so along with working on various things this week, I fielded some phone calls, which sometimes I have fun with and just kind of shake my head and go, really? But, hey, it's all part of the business.
It's funny you mentioned a 6 to 7-year-old computer because most people will never fix those. But I got a guy last week. It was almost a 7-year-old Sony Vaio laptop, and he called me, a new customer, said, I think I got a virus. It was working fine yesterday.
Of course it was.
My car was working fine yesterday. My engine was driving down the road, and all of a sudden I blew the engine, right? Anyway, it was working fine yesterday. Anyway, so I go and pick it up, and I call him up, and I say, you have a dead motherboard, right? I tested everything. The motherboard was dead.
Sure.
And I said, look, this is almost 7 years old. It's not worth it. And he said, but it's a Sony Vaio. It's blah, blah. Anyway, he talked me. He said, listen, I have a budget of $500 plus tax. He said, if you can get it working for $500. So I immediately go on Kijiji, which is kind of like Craigslist in Canada here. And
okay.
I found one in the nearby town. And I went and picked it up and made a $150 profit. And the guy's happy. But it's like it's the exact same computer, right? The guy, yeah, I don't know. But why spend that much money on an old computer? I just don't get it.
And for $500, you can get a pretty decent laptop. You're not going to get top end, but you're going to get middle of the road, which is going to do most people fine, and it's going to be built a little bit better than the ultra laptops.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the Vios were pretty nice. They do have nice screens and stuff like that, but
they're horrible to work on, though.
They are horrible. Yeah. I got to admit, though, I took an Asus apart today, and I look at the back of it, and I'm like, oh, I got to take this whole thing apart to get the drive. But as soon as I took it apart, there were only 2 ribbon cables. I didn't even have to remove the ribbon cables. I could move the keyboard enough that I could get the drive out, and the drive was in a nice spot that I could easily get out of. I was impressed, because I see a lot of the Dells and different models nowadays where you have to actually take the motherboard out and flip it around to get to the darn. It just doesn't make sense to me. I get why they don't want to put a little tray on the side, but I mean, you really shouldn't have to take the board out to change a hard drive, right?
Well, not only that, you're talking about a high failure part.
Right.
So if you already know it's a high failure part, why would you lock somebody in? Because they're going to send it back to you so you can have it for 6 weeks to try to fix it? I mean, fortunately, most of us that actually do take laptops apart, we can do it fairly easily. But it even to me, it's frustrating. It's like, why? Yeah. Now, some of these other companies are actually doing pretty good, though, because what they're doing is they are starting to put where the bottom cover comes off, and you can pretty much get to everything. I can usually get to a CPU fan by taking off a couple screws. I can get to the hard drive on a lot of these systems by a couple screws once I take that back cover off. Now, there might be 15 screws in the bottom to hold it together, but once you pull those out, everything is pretty much easy to come apart. So I am liking some of the newer designs. I wish they would have some more consistency, though.
Yeah. I got a question for you. You guys ever, anytime anyone ever asks about repairing a hinge on a laptop, I always say, no, we don't do that. But if I have it in and it's broken, usually it's not the hinge that's broken, but it's usually the plastic that breaks, like on a cheap Windows laptop where the screws go in. Lately, I've been using, if I have it in here for a couple of days, lately I've been using JB Weld. But do you guys use anything? Like sometimes I'll just fix that as a freebie on this, as I'm doing other things on their computer. But have you guys ever fixed, like where the plastic breaks or anything, or?
So, well, go ahead, Marvin. You probably don't even take that stuff apart. Marvin's like,
no, he's not touching that.
No, I have somebody I can refer that to.
Yeah.
Memory, hard drive, that's it.
Yeah.
Now, from my standpoint, a lot of times when I do have those machines in, generally minimum you'll have 2 to 3 screws, right? Minimum.
Right.
The ones that are better have 4 or 5 on the hinge. So what I want to generally do is usually if one is broken free, there's usually 2 other ones that are loose. And so I can either put some epoxy. JB Weld is probably a good idea, though. I didn't think about that.
It's strong, yeah.
I've used epoxy before where I'll just build up that standoff and maybe I'll actually glue the screw in there.
Yeah.
But usually once I tighten down the other 2, the hinge will work fine at that point. For whatever reason, I don't know why, but it seems like hinges they're so tight from the manufacturer, and people are so abusive, I guess, opening and closing this thing all the time, that they just don't hold on. And a lot of times they'll have those grommets in the plastic too. And now sometimes I can get the grommet, and if I can glue the grommet back into the plastic, shove it down in there, put some epoxy on it, hold it in place, and then go ahead and put the screw back in there so at least you can take it apart.
Yeah.
But the only other thing, if it's totally destroyed, and I've had some like this, where I basically just tell the customer, we can order a whole new bottom case, but that's basically what you're going to need for this to work right. Or top case, or whatever, the top of the computer behind the screen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, one time I ordered a hinge for somebody, or actually a set of hinges. I think I paid $60. It took whatever 2.5, 3 weeks to get here, and they were the wrong hinges. So I'll never order hinges for anybody again.
oh no.
But like something simple like that. I just think if it just takes a few extra minutes and it's sitting there, you may as well just throw it in, right? If you can fix it quickly, right?
Either that or take a heat gun to it, heat it up.
Yeah.
Kidding.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into some emails. We got a few emails today. All right. This is from Brandon Robertson. It says, hey guys, love the show. I listen all the time on my commute to and from work. Keep up the good work. You guys make me laugh all the time. People in the cars next to me probably think I'm crazy as I yell out some of the answers to the questions you receive. I'm like Uncle Marv here in Houston, Texas. Love my fluke tools. Hey, you got a fan. I have been in computers since 1980. I also do board level repairs. My motto is if it plugs into a wall or takes batteries, it can be repaired. I've worked for all the insert big companies' names here. Now I consult people as people come to me when they need it fixed and fixed right. I'm known as the don't throw it away, let's repair it guy. On show 157, you guys could not think of anyone using Linux full time. I wish I could have called in there, and there are plenty of companies using the Linux desktop full time. HostGator uses Linux Ubuntu as their desktop and running all of their web hosting on big iron servers. I used to work at NCR and had to change many spinning hard drives at the Pizza Hut that uses Linux as the order-taking registers and line prep screens. Walmart uses Linux to handle all the people cash registers up front, along with all the music and video you see in the store. Linux also controls the lighting in Walmart. The post office uses Linux, but not at the little postal kiosk. Linux is all around in the back end of a lot of companies. So to that, I would say it wouldn't hurt to know a few commands in Linux. Sudo shutdown now. Brandon Robertson. Thank you for the email, Brandon. Appreciate that. We understand that Linux is actually a thing. Now, I can't remember exactly what was said on 157, and I probably should have went back and listened, but I didn't. So if I remember correctly, we were probably talking about Linux never being a home desktop system. Now, there's probably companies that are able to they've got geeky enough people that work there that they're able to actually use it, no problem. The problem that you're going to run into, and you're right, a lot of back-end stuff is going to use Linux because it runs light, it's easy, it works. A lot of that can run without a GUI. You run it from command line, and it works beautifully. And that's why a lot of people use that. Plus, it's free. The problem you're going to run into, and because I work for a Ford Motor Company, and I was just looking at our crane system that basically warehouses the pallets of steel that we store, and they had this company come in, and I'm looking at the servers, and because we had a problem all week, and I'm looking at it, and I go, holy cow, this is written for like a humongous warehouse type thing, is what one of the electricians was telling me. And so I'm looking at it and going, this is just probably way too much for what they need. But the problem is these companies are all writing software for Windows. I don't know how many of them are writing software for Linux to run these different, command modules that they need in these warehousing systems or whatever they're doing for their different robots and whatnot. Sure, is a back-end Linux kernel, Unix GUI, or command line, it's going to work fine. But I just don't know how many companies are doing that. And as a matter of fact, the electrician was actually telling me that basically back in 1989 when the system was put in, it was actually run on Apple desktops or Apple servers or something to that effect, where they had to go back in and rewrite a lot of this stuff. And a lot of the licensed software I see out there actually only runs on Windows. And it's usually proprietary, usually written by one company that does it for a specific service. So, but I think I think going back to, I think we were talking about, I don't know that, and I'm playing around with Ubuntu right now on the computer behind me. I don't know that it's going to become mainstream, because even if people are able to use it for what they need it for, that's fine. And maybe it'll work for them, maybe it won't. But I know a lot of people love to, for whatever reason, love to download little free programs and play with them and do whatever they want to do. And I don't know that they would have the same ability in Linux or the same amount of stuff. We might know where to find stuff, and there's a lot of cool software out there. The average user is not going to know unless somebody's actually sitting there teaching them. So, for any of you Linux users out there, if you want to actually use or teach people to use Linux, I say more power to you.
But with Linux, you won't walk in the morning and see a message, all your files are exactly where you left them. I see that too often.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
No, I think, and again, we understand the servers and the networks and everything are the back end stuff is all definitely used for that type of thing, and because it works. And here's what I say to people: whatever tool works for you, whether in your business or outside of your business, personal, recreational, work, whatever, use that tool for the job. I will never fall under, I would love, let's be honest, I personally love Windows. I haven't had a problem since Windows 98, to be honest with you. And so, and that was a lot of stuff that I was probably doing back then and screwing it up. But Windows for me has ran perfectly fine this whole time. But I understand for a lot of people out there that Windows can be frustrating, especially in the business environments. You got people that do stupid things, and they just I know, I get it. But at the same token, even though I'd love to have a Windows phone that would hook into my Windows system, or a Windows tablet that would hook into my Windows system, there are inherent problems with some of that stuff. So I don't use those. I use Android for the same reason that I use Windows, because to me they're identically the same at how complex or how easy they can be to use. However you want to use them, you can. That's why I love both of those systems. Now a lot of people they look at me and they go, that doesn't make any sense. But to me it does, because again, I'm going to use the things that my brain understands and works in a certain way, and that's just what works for me. Marvin, anything on Linux? Do you support any Linux at all?
I had one customer that had a Linux server that I had to help support, but was not my main line of business. And I made the decision a long time ago that Windows was it, and that's what I've supported. Now, that will probably start to change here as things become more app-based and are going to be basically cross-platform. So it's the OS is not going to matter as much in a few years. So obviously, when that time comes, things will be a-changing. But support will be a whole lot different at that time too, because it's basically going to be, I think we're going to have the type of deal where, right now if your phone doesn't work, you take it back to AT&T or Sprint or T-Mobile and you swap out a phone or whatever. I think computers will come somewhat like that, where if something doesn't work, you just basically swap out a computer, because everything's going to be either cloud-based, desktop as a service, or something like that. So we're going to have some different support issues when it comes to desktops, at least in the business world. Home world, I have no idea. That's what you're going to deal with.
Not your cup of tea. No, I understand. Well, even from a phone standpoint, yeah, okay. My son just had to replace his phone, and because it wasn't working correctly, yeah, if they replaced it, just $200. They replaced it, and it was less than 2 years old, and it's like. There's still going to be an inherent cost in doing these things, and
there is, but it's going to be, well, you can pay me to do the same thing that they're going to do. So in that sense, they're really not going to need us as much, except for those specialized cases where there's special configurations that need to be downloaded or set up, or we've got to work with a software vendor for special settings, or there are some special installation. That's where I think, at least from my standpoint now, like I said, for home users, it could be completely different. But in a business, if I've got to deal with a system going bad, usually it's because something happened where Windows crashed or a user downloaded a virus or those things I can deal with. Or if I've got to replace a machine, I've got the whole line of business software to reinstall and the user's not allowed to reinstall it. Those are the types of things. But pretty soon it's going to be, they're going to walk into an office. All we do is load up a desktop, and it's just a matter of placing some apps on the desktop so they can go access their software, because that's not going to be on a server that I host anymore.
Right. Yeah, you're right. That's definitely a good point, because it's going to be, a lot of stuff is going to be cloud based.
Right.
And people, as long as they can get to that cloud, they'll be fine. So, all right. Very good. Don, I don't know, did I ask you, do you support anything Linux-wise?
No, I don't support anything, but I do play around with it, and I do use it a little bit for data recovery and stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, I do love Linux, but like you say, it's hard for businesses because there's training involved, right? And driver issues and whatnot, right? So yeah, it doesn't make necessarily sense for end users for businesses.
All right. All right, second email says, keep up the good work. This is from Gary Oliver. Jeff, I just want to let you know what a good job you're doing. I wish I had found you earlier than I did. I'm from Hawaii, I'm jealous, and started my own business here in computer repair. At the time I started, there was nobody I could turn to for advice or help. That was in 2003. I managed to work from my bedroom office to my garage and then into my first storefront. Ended having 3 full-time employees plus myself, sold the business in 2014, and moved to Eastern Washington. Oh, bummer. To a small town called Walla Walla. Is that a real place? My wife is from here. Now I'm trying to restart my business again, but it hasn't been easy. Anyway, somehow I came across your podcast late 2015 and feel right at home. I listen on my phone in the morning when I go walking. I really like to hear from other independent store owners and their stories. It has boosted my morale, and though my business hasn't gotten anywhere, I haven't given up trying due in part to listening to your podcasts. It's nice to know I'm not the only one who struggled to get a business going. Keep up the good work, Gary Oliver. Thank you, Gary, for the email. Really appreciate that. I'm glad we're able to boost your morale, and yeah, keep it going, man. I mean, you did it one time, you can do it again. Different place, a lot of the same circumstances. All right. This is from our good friend John Dubinsky. Says, Jeff, not sure if you know of these guys. www.parts-people.com. I do not think they are the cheapest, but service is very good, and they have just about everything you would ever need for Dell laptops. I checked out the site earlier, and it looks really good. Have a great day, John Dubinsky. Thank you, John, for that email. We'll have that link in the show notes. Yeah, it looks like everything that you would need for a Dell laptop. And if you guys have ever searched for parts for laptops, it can be quite hairy sometimes. So hopefully this will help some people out, especially if you're supporting Dell, which is what John does. John picked Dell as his go-to for everything. And because of that, he basically is able to niche down and basically find parts just for what he services. And that'll help me out too, with because a lot of times there's a lot of Dells that still come in. All right, last email. This is from Chris Webb. It says, I know you guys talk a lot about Windows 10 installing on its own. I actually had it happen to me this week. I was running a network cable in a car lot I support. On Tuesday, I left at the end of the business day with staff and all was fine. Everyone had Windows 7. They leave the computers on overnight, and the guy who works at this computer was out that day. On Wednesday morning, I go in with the manager before the staff to finish and notice this computer has updated to Windows 10. I was in the room most of the day on Tuesday because this is where the networking closet is. The employees also know not to click on anything about updating to 10. This is because their software only runs on Windows 7, and there was a serious issue with people upgrading to 8 in the past with the old support company. Just thought I would share my phantom upgrade story. And that's from Chris Webb. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate the email on that. Have you guys had any Windows 10 machines just arbitrarily?
Well,
I compare it.
Go ahead,
Don.
I was going to say I compare these to UFO sightings. I don't have any myself that have upgraded, but I have maybe 20 or so customers over the last 3 or 4 months that their computers just randomly upgraded to Windows 10. But it seems like you do have to click on it several times to upgrade it. But anyone who has had an upgrade, you have to look for the KB3035583 and remove that. And then once you remove that, that's the download file, then it won't reinstall if you've already reserved it. So if you reserved it and it's downloaded, that's the download. If you remove that, it'll try, whenever the time was, it'll try to update it later. But it won't be able to because you've already removed that. So, but no, I don't think it does it automatically.
Yeah. John, before you get too far along, that is no longer the case.
Oh, no?
No, as of this past week, March 8th,
yep,
they replaced that KB with a new one, 3139929.
Okay.
So a lot of people woke up on Wednesday with Windows 10 installation notifications. Most of the time it should have been just the icon, but Microsoft has pushed that and a couple of other Windows 10 update notifications inside of Internet Explorer 11 update notifications.
Okay.
And they did it this time to get around the domain computer installations. So if a network was not using Windows Server Update Services, WSUS, or using the System Installation Center server, or you didn't block, there's actually a group policy that blocks updates to the next Windows operating system. So if you didn't do any of that, then you could have walked in Wednesday and Thursday with people not knowing that they're just going to click OK to do the updates, and then all of a sudden end up with Windows 10. Granted, if they read, they will see it. This is going to update you. Do you want to continue, yes or no? And most people clicked yes. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. So it still comes back to user error. I mean, yes, we understand that Microsoft is getting in everyone's face about this, and they have downloaded the bits. I know some people were complaining about them downloading the bits. Guys, they've been downloading the bits since last July. Okay, if you go and reserve it, they were automatically downloading the bits in most cases at that point. So the bits have been sitting on most people's systems for a very long time, well before March. And so with that stuff sitting there, here's the problem. And this is what I see. I've been in business environments where, maybe the cleaning lady walked by and sees something on there, or maybe another employee said, oh, why is there a pop-up on there? Let me go ahead and shut that down. And people blindly click on stuff all the time. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying that from the research I've done and from what Microsoft was saying is, yes, it's under a recommended update. They are downloading the bits. They absolutely are doing that. And yes, they shouldn't be allowed to do that because in a few areas of the country, rural areas, maybe they do have a cap where they don't need to download that 3 gigs of data. I get that. Okay, so nobody should be forced with that. I will say that you still have to give it permission to upgrade. And I know it can't be, and especially it shouldn't be that way in a business environment whatsoever anyways. You shouldn't have that ability to go in there and bypass the domain.
But the problem is Microsoft makes it look like, hey, we're trying to update your computer and we can't because you don't have admin rights. Go check with your administrator to give you rights. So there are a lot of places where end users are calling the tech department saying, hey, why can't I do this update? And the tech's got to say, well, we can't do that update now, or we haven't vetted it and we haven't tested it. And it caused a lot of havoc this week on business computers because even though Microsoft has been downloading that stuff, domain computers were getting away with it for a long time. And like I said, March 8th, they bypassed it. And if you weren't on top of the network with those settings, especially the group policies or whatever, businesses were walking in today or Wednesday. Out of all mine, I only had a couple of people notice the icon, and we just told them to ignore it. And then I went back and got the GWX control panel and went back and removed everything. And just as a note, if you have used the GWX control panel in the last year, you have to get the latest update. because the latest update adds some more options in there to not only remove the icon, remove all Windows 10 apps, remove the update cache, remove Windows 10 upgrade note. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff to remove now that that we've just got to pay attention to.
I don't know. Maybe my customers are a little smarter. I'm not sure, but everyone that has said, "Should I upgrade to Windows 10?" and I go, if they're on Windows 7 or Windows 8, is everything working the way you want it to right now? Yes, it is. Then don't upgrade. And I haven't used the GWX control panel or nothing. I just leave it sitting there. It pops up every once in a while. They shut it down. It's not a big deal. So we'll see what happens here in the next couple weeks to see if these people call me and say, "Hey, I'm on Windows 10 now. What happened?"
Yeah, I've been using a GWX control panel on one computer for about 2 months, and I've never had even one notification so far.
Okay.
But what I worry about is the residential customers I support. If they go ahead and do that upgrade to Windows 10, I've seen in a couple cases where maybe they have a bad hard drive or something,
sure,
and it doesn't go through, and then it won't go back for you. So then they're
right,
kind of left. We need to go in and fix it, right? So that's what I worry about if they don't have a good backup. That there's no guarantee you're going to be able to roll it back. I mean, at 99.9% of the time, it should, no problem. But
there's been a lot of case scenarios where the rollback has not worked to 100%. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It's just like the upgrade process. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it usually hoses the system pretty bad, where you usually have to go back to the previous operating system by doing a fresh install. Or a lot of the times, if the Windows 10 actually, and I've had this on a few computers that have done their own upgrades, or a few customers that have done their own upgrades, if it got verified and authenticated, then I'm able to basically pull the product key from the drive and reinstall the operating system using that product key, and it's been working for me. So, a lot of people they're like, yeah, Windows 10 is fine, but it's just something in the transfer, something in the upgrade really mucks some things up. So, and probably because it's not just bad hard drives, but if you have any type of malware and different things that are in the system, and you have this upgrade going through, that stuff is crappy code anyways, and it's going to mess it up.
True.
So a lot of people, they don't. Again, I always tell my customers, when in doubt, call me. It's so simple.
You got to give it to Windows, though. That's one thing they're doing good, is really pushing this Windows 10. Eh?
Yeah, well, for good, bad, or indifferent, I love it, but yet it's not for everyone. So, and I understand that. Now, I still have a theory. This is my theory. A lot of people will tell me I'm wrong. I still think in July this will all go away, and you're going to pay, whatever it is for the upgrade, or whatever it is for an OEM or retail product for Windows 10 from there on. A lot of people think that Microsoft's still going to keep pushing this out. We'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of rumors that it may be free, but nobody really knows, right?
Exactly. That's my point. So my theory is, what I said, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen often, but I could be. Anyways, all right, let's take a quick break. And this show is brought to you by Pulse Printing and Promotions. Get help with all your print and promotional needs. Business cards, postcards, stickers, mouse pads, fridge and car magnets, shirts, pens, and so much more. You can see some of the most popular items online, and new items are being added all the time. If you need something that is not listed, just ask. Make sure you use the promo code Podnutz for a 5% discount off every order. It never expires. You can also sign up for their newsletter to receive monthly specials. And if you sign up for the newsletter now, you will be entered to win 500 business cards. So go ahead, and I will have the link in the show notes to do that. Darren over at Pulse Printing and Promotion designed and printed my business cards, and I love them. They were exactly what I needed. It was a fresh upgrade and new picture. I try not to put the lovely pictures of when I was in my 20s and put it on any of my facsimiles now. But no, I gave him a photo and some things, and boom, he put it on there, and I loved them. Nice heavy cards, work great, smooth on both sides, real nice. So go to pulseprintpromo.com and use the offer code Podnutz. And we want to thank Pulse Printing and Promotions for sponsoring this episode of Podnutz. All right, on to our main topic. We had a lot with the emails, a lot of interaction there. Residential or business? And I guess what I mean by that It's kind of just hit me the other day as I was looking through some topic subjects. Marvin's over there smiling. Residential or business? Do we need to have, because here's what a lot of people are saying. A lot of people are saying that they've had a residential business for years, been supporting residential customers, and now the big thing is, oh, I'm firing my residential customers. I'm gonna be a MSP now. To that I say, okay. If people actually knew what they were saying when they say I'm going to be an MSP, most people don't even really grasp what an MSP is. And I say this, I've said this, I'll say it again. MSPs, true MSPs, are very few and far between. A true MSP, in my opinion, is a person that handles everything from top to bottom. In other words, I come into a business and I go, okay, I see all the stuff you have in place. I see your network. I see your servers. I see your switches and your routers and your firewalls and your workstations, and here's what we're going to do. For $50,000, we're replacing all this stuff. And I'm coming in and I'm yanking it all out and I'm putting the stuff that I support because I know it best, because that's what I do. I support one set of things. I put all that stuff in and I support it from top to bottom. That is a true MSP. Most people are, in my opinion, what I would call a hybrid, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being a hybrid. Most of us are hybrids because none of us do everything exactly the same. We've all got our little things that we do maybe a little bit differently. One of the things, and I love what John Dubinsky always says, he goes, what I know is I don't know everything, and I can always learn, and there's always new things to learn out there. So that's why I want to bring up this topic. Do I need to move from residential to business? And here's the thing, and Marvin, you'll have an understanding of this. Okay, going from basically a one-man show to having employees, going back to a one-man show where you use different things to support what you do, there were different headaches that you had in each of those scenarios. It was never just as simple as, oh, I've got employees, everything's a piece of cake now. I'm just going to go out there and I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to manage. Yeah, a lot of us figure out that that's not exactly what it's all entailed to be. So from that standpoint, if you actually enjoy supporting residential customers, and maybe you don't ever want to get into business, in order to make it, do you actually have to get into business? Marvin, and I know yours is a little bit different, but what would you say to the scenario I just painted?
Well, there's so many different caveats to this because a lot of it depends on your market, your area. And if you're in an area where the residential market is not being supported, you can absolutely make a living just simply doing residential. Now, whether you love it or not, that's a whole different issue. That's that's not part of the equation in the sense of which is right or wrong or whatever. But in terms of, when I've talked with people who've wanted to make the jump, it's usually because they're looking for a more sustainable stream of income. Because, if you don't have a storefront where you're able to pull people in and get that walk-in traffic, you're out there hustling for business. So, is it easier to hustle, businesses where you can walk in and deal with 10 computers, 20 computers at a time, as opposed to going and finding 10 to 20 individual customers to support? And that's really what it boils down to. The reason I ended up the way I was because our shop that we worked at back before I went full-time on my own was basically a store, and we handled 90% residential stuff. That was, we bought and sold new and used computers, we did repairs, we ran a flea market on the weekends. So we had tons of people coming into the shop all the time, and at that time we were one of a few shops that still dealt with used computers. Where you could go and find parts. We had thousands of hard drives and video cards and network cards and CPUs, because we were at that time we were dealing with 386 and 486 computers, and it was worth it to go from a 486 DX266 to a DX4 100 because there was a huge speed increase, and $200 was worth it back then.
Sure.
So times have changed. I don't know that it's as easy to do that these days, but there are a lot of shops that are still making it, doing the residential market. So in that sense, I have to say that it's really a matter of what's in your area, what you like to do, and can you capture that business. I'll let Don answer, and then we can come back to the whole MSP discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I started out 4 or 5 years ago, and initially it was all residential. I didn't target any businesses, but very shortly after opening, you would get those residential customers that also own businesses, and they say, "Hey, you support businesses too," and they learn to trust you with their residential computers, and then the next thing you know, you're supporting their small business. Some are just in-home business, some may be a hardware store or whatever, and then of course once you're supporting their store, then they tell their friends that they network with, and now I definitely support, I don't know, maybe 60-70% more like businesses versus maybe 30% residential. But I don't have a ton of businesses yet on managed monthly service plans, but I'm just starting more and more to get people on that as well. But I don't know. I don't mind. I think it's good for me to have a mix because I don't manage the large businesses. Like 20 computers or less generally is the most I usually would manage for one business. But I like a good mix. I'd be afraid to have just a few large customers and then maybe have something happen where that customer goes away for whatever reason, and then all of a sudden you have that that big hole where you're used to having that revenue come in. For whatever reason, with the residential customers, it just seems like I have no problem getting 3 to 4 jobs per day. It just seems to work out. And then on top of that, I'm doing my remote stuff for businesses, or the bigger jobs for businesses on top of that. So it works out well. But I think most people will find it if you start small with the residential, you're going to end up getting a lot of business anyway.
Very good.
Yeah.
I like it. All right, going back to you, Marvin, on the MSP.
So on the MSP side.
Wait, well, let's define. What does MSP stand for?
Managed Service Provider.
There you go. Okay. I just want people to know.
Well, but here's the thing. That's what it's called, but in terms of how it's used in business, is obviously viewed differently by a lot of different people. The true MSP provider, as you said, I think there are very, very few of them, because most businesses, you're not going to be able to go in and get every piece of that business. So you have to get bits and pieces of it. But what we do still falls under the MSP category. For instance, the remote monitoring and management, is an MSP tool, but that doesn't make me an MSP, even though all of my business customers, I have some sort of RMM tool that I have on their servers and their desktops. I also have my managed backup clients that falls a part of that. I also have my firewalls that I will manage on a monthly basis. But none of my customers can I say that I have them fully under an MSP product, because there are still pieces of their network that we don't manage that way. I still have to go on site and look at stuff. I still have to do, remote access to get some stuff. But on the other hand, I have a couple of clients where I don't have a quote-unquote RMM tool, but I'm still charging them as if I did, because I'm able to charge them X number of dollars per computer and per server for support.
Right.
And so the way I've always looked at business is, you've got your break fix, that you're just never going to have 100% of the people that want to pay a monthly fee, whether it's a service agreement, whether it's a warranty agreement. They just don't want to pay that. They'll pay for a fix when they need it. And then you do have people that, yeah, I want to pay something, I just don't want to pay a lot.
Right.
So I want to pay to have you in retainer, or I want to pay to be able to call you at a discounted rate. So that's how I've been able to build up my business by, some of it's called retainer, some of it's just called service contract, because I really don't, not contract, service agreement, because it's never really a contract, because both sides can leave at any time.
Right.
And we base that off of the Florida right to work state law, that an employee can be fired by a business and basically at any time for any reason. An employee can leave for any time for any reason. There are companies that do have contracts, but for the most part they really don't stand up a lot down here. It's a right to work state, and that's the way it is. So I do that same philosophy with my business customers. We'll set up an agreement. You pay me X number of dollars to do this amount of work, and I will do that amount of work. But at any time, if you're unhappy, you can leave. If I'm unhappy, I'm going to leave.
Right.
And that's the way it is. So most MSPs that are of the true MSP vein will do contracts. And a lot of that's based on the fact that in order for them to get the tools to do what they need to do, they've got to pay a contract.
Right.
In order to get that stuff. So in terms of the way that you can handle servers and desktops and have instant access when you need it, and to do more of the monitoring, and I'm not talking about just hard drive health, or is it up or down, or can I push out the updates. I'm talking about true MSP stuff where they can get in and see the SNMP information of a network traffic on a system, and be able to view the logs at any given time, and all of that's to get some of that true MSP stuff, it's going to cost a lot more money to do. So that's the far end of it. So trying to bring it back to, if you're just dealing with a residential or business decision, you've got to do it based on what can you do to get that monthly stream of income up. Can you add business services? Can you add a piece of an MSP model? Can you add, managed antivirus, managed backup? And that'll get you into the business model of, MSP, even though you're not going to be a full MSP.
Right.
Office 365 is going to be probably the one big area that all of us are going to have to move into at some point in time. Office 365 hosted email, because those of us that manage Exchange servers or mail servers on premise, that's going to go away soon.
Yeah.
If it is, if for the most part, if it hasn't already gone away in a lot of cases.
Well, it's, I still have a couple of clients where they have to have an on-premise server because of their line of business software. And
that's understandable. Yeah, use case scenario, sure.
Yep. So, I don't know. To go back and, I guess, answer the question, how to make that decision, that was an easy one for me. When I worked at the store and we did all the residential stuff, we did not go on site to do anything. You had to come to the store. However, the owner did allow for us to, go out and deal with people after hours. If somebody came into the store and said, look, I can't bring my computer here, can you come out? We couldn't do it during the day, but if we could go after 6 o'clock or on the weekends, he was okay with that. His only rule was if we had to buy parts, we bought them from the store. So I got a lot of business clients that way, because either on my day off or on Saturday they would meet me at their business to do that. And that's what got me thinking, I could, make a living selling my services during the day to these customers, because apparently a lot of people weren't doing it back then. So that's how I got to go, on my own, supporting businesses early. And I had a built-in clientele from the store, and once you make yourself available 9 to 5, it's easy for people to say, yeah, I know a guy who's available. You call him, he'll come right over and take care of you.
Right.
So that's what helped me make that decision.
Well, and I think what you said was really key there is you had a set of circumstances and things that happened that kind of pushed you along that route. What the problem I see is a lot of people nowadays are they're trying to manually grab a hold of this situation and go, here's what I'm going to do. Because here's what I hear a bunch of people in the industry saying. You need to drop those residential customers and go into MSP, and you need to be a true blue American whatever MSP. I don't know. It just, to me, it's like, no. Going back to what Don said, Don, you got a lot of your business customers. Same thing with me. I get my business customers from the residential customers that I've worked on their computers, and then whatever their business is, they'll call me at a different time or say, hey, like you said, do you support business? Yeah, no problem.
Yep.
And you come out and you deal with that stuff. And again, you're not going in and go, oh, all this stuff sucks. We're going to pull everything out, because they're just going to look at you and be like going, are you nuts?
Right.
No, we just get it to work.
Right. But I do agree that you do want to get rid of whatever it is. It's not necessarily the 20% of the customers that are taking 80% of your time, but everybody has those customers that
Sure.
are maybe too needy or not willing to pay the price, or they want to do everything their way, and unrealistic expectations. Those are the kind of customers that it's okay to get rid of those people, I think. But yeah, you definitely.
Or
I think
double your price.
Right, exactly, and I do that. Yeah, but I think it is good over time. Naturally, I think everyone's going to get more and more business clients, and then I don't see me ever just doing only business. But the problem with business is as you take on more and more business work, you take on more and more responsibility. So you need more training, you need better tools, you need better equipment. So there's a cost and there's time associated with that as well. So that's why it's nice if you can do it gradually instead of just jumping in, with both feet. If you can do it gradually, you can learn what you need to learn. You can buy the tools and get the equipment slowly as you need it.
That's a good point. And Aaron from Techie Tutors is saying that I was just reading the chat room. He says also residential jobs are usually easier. Now John Dubinsky laughs at me all the time because he looks at it and he goes, he hears about the stuff that I work on, and he's like going, dude. He goes, I use Dell. I use a certain business class line of Dell products. They're the same. Forwards, backwards, front, it doesn't matter. But if a part goes bad, I know what the part is. Boom. He goes, you're dealing with different stuff all the time. He goes, you guys say that the business stuff is harder. He goes, I don't agree with that. He goes, I think that the stuff that you guys put up with is much harder because you're not dealing with the same types of things. You're having to troubleshoot, try to figure out what exactly is going on. And that's where when I was doing a lot of residential stuff, that's where a lot of my time was taken up, because what I was figuring out is, if you're replacing a hard drive and reinstalling an operating system, that's pretty straightforward, right? And even to get to the conclusion that you need to do that, it's not too bad. You back up the data, you replace the hard drives, you reinstall the operating system, you put all the updates back on there, you move their data back over. It's not that bad. Now, sometimes when you're trying to sit there and do a virus removal on a machine that you don't want to wipe because they've got all kinds of software that you would have to reinstall, even though you charge them for it, it's kind of like it's still a pain to do. So it's kind of like, a lot of times I tell them, I said, hey, you're going to have to put this, this, and this, and this back on. Right. You got the product keys, you got the emails. If you want to pay me to do it, that's fine, but you did it the first time, you can do it again. So a lot of times I alleviate the problem that way. But there's a lot of times when we spend time in trying to figure things out, and it's really a time suck. So definitely trying to niche down your processes and basically know exactly the things you're going to be good at and the things you're not going to be good at when it's dealing with residential or business, because either one of them you could spend and waste a lot of time in doing either one of those businesses. So.
And with business, I think you have to take greater care. You have to be more careful with their data. You probably need to have better insurance. And
absolutely.
You have to limit some of the tools that think, okay, on a consumer computer, no problem. This residential computer, I can run this tool, no big deal, right? But whereas I'm not going to go into a doctor's office and start running combo fix on their server or something. You know what I mean? You got.
But why?
It works the same. It'll wipe out any system.
That's right.
But you get it, right? But
Oh yeah, well
you
yeah,
just have to be more careful, right?
yeah. There's a lot more responsibility when a business is making money off of what's on that computer.
Right.
But you do have the ability to standardize. You do have the ability to be a bit more selective in the troubleshooting that you do. If somebody needs you to troubleshoot, some free program that they downloaded and installed, you can be like, well, that's not a business related item, forget it.
Right.
That sort of stuff. But I will say this, business is not easier from the standpoint of responsibility, where if a business is down and they can't work, they are going to be on you a lot more to get them back up and running. And for some businesses, it doesn't matter if it's 3 in the afternoon or 3 in the morning. They want to be up and running.
And I don't have a problem with that as long as you listen to the things that I told you would need in case this happens. If you don't, I'll get to it as soon as I can. But I'm not in a real big hurry, to be honest with you, because if you would have put A, B, and C in place, or as we talked about before, D, E, and G, or whatever, or D, E, and F, yeah, I skipped a letter. Anyways, so if you were able to put all these things in place that I told you needed, even if it's over a year's time, and we're kind of working towards that, I'm a little more giving when it comes to, okay, no problem. Hey, we're working towards this, not a problem. But when you just go, hey, no, yeah, back up, no, we're not doing that. Going, CryptoLocker got your whole office? Yeah, I don't know what you're going to do.
What I dread is when I walk into a place, like I recently went into a place kind of like a Boston Pizza. It wasn't Boston Pizza, but like a Boston Pizza, pretty big restaurant. The guy had a full server rack in the back, and they were down. And I'm looking. I brought my little Link Sprinter 300, so I was able to flash the light on the switch because nothing's marked, of course, right? So I love this little tool. But I'm in there, and I'm digging through this server rack, and I'm just finding router after router after router in there, like like $30 D-Link routers, and it looked like the owner or somebody just kept adding more and more routers in there for whatever reason. And I'm thinking, why? Why would you do that, right? But the first time you go into some of these businesses when they're down, you run into some of the stuff that you're not really expecting, Whereas like what Marvin's saying, if you're controlling, or if you built that relationship up and you're more in control of the network, then you should have things backed up and plans in place. But more like for a smaller shop like me, where you're just getting that first call, sometimes it can be a bit of a wake up the first time you walk in some of these businesses. They're totally disorganized,
And I don't think that I don't think personally that one is easier or harder than the other, but when you're on the other side, the grass is greener always on the other side. When you're looking at it from the other side, you're kind of going, oh, wait a minute. That might be, a little bit more difficult, a little harder. But my point is, there are pros and cons to everything that we do, everything that we service. From the residential side to the business side, there's going to be good things and bad things that are on both sides, and things you have to deal with, and they're not always fun. Some are easy, man, when you walk in there, and it just like, you're like, oh yeah, I found a problem, boom, and you're in and out, and you're like, oh, great day. Yeah. And then other times you're going, I don't know, I'm not sure. We'll have to dig into this a little bit more, and then you're kind of like going. Then you kind of get almost, and I think a lot of us do this, we get in that panic state because we want to look good and we want to look like we know what we're doing, and the reality is all this stuff is a crapshoot for the most part. I mean, there are certain tools and things you can have. Yeah, you know, like you were talking about, Don, with the link spreader. Man, you're able to plug in and go, yep. But okay, here's a problem. You trace it back to that closet, and you go, wait, why do you have all this stuff in here? What are you doing? And, it was cheaper, but it was probably cheaper to buy that $30 router than it was to call you out to actually fix it right. So
yeah, it's crazy. Well, it's funny because they had called another technician out. What was he? He was their point of sale system guy, and he had to come from. It was about an hour and a half drive that this guy had to come. Anyway, he turns off the computer onto the desk. There's a whole bunch of computers back there. He turns off the computer onto the desk, and I'm thinking, okay, there's a good chance Zach's not going to come on. I'm looking at the side of it, and the vent, the big vent in the side, the dust is like pushing through the vent, like it was like it had never been turned off. And of course, it didn't turn on, and he's playing with it. Eventually, got it to come back up again, right? But
yeah, just keep pressing the power button. Just keep pressing.
But I've been in those situations like Marvin's talking about, where there's a lot more pressure on you. Like sometimes there's an employee standing there watching what you're doing, waiting how much longer before the server's up or whatever, that kind of stuff. So there's definitely a lot more pressure when maybe all of their point of sale systems are down or something, and they can't sell anything, or whatever type of office or whatever it is that's down. But I got to tell you, the one thing I do like about businesses, I like it when I walk out my mailbox and I got 3 or 4 big checks on a Monday or a Tuesday.
Sure.
And I just don't get that with the residential clients.
And that's a great point. You definitely, in my opinion, you definitely need to have some sort of residual income. And that's what Marvin was talking about, having kind of that where you've got some that during those low months, maybe when the residential work's not coming in, you're boosting it because you're doing regular service for businesses out there, or even small business, small home offices. If you're doing that on a regular basis, then you've got kind of something to fall back on. So again, in my opinion, most people are going to do a hybrid approach, and that's okay. But don't try to become something that, number one, you may not be good at, you may not like it, and it may not be worth your time. So just because other people are doing it that way, I pick my battles, and I pick what I'm going to support and what I'm not going to support. And I know there's a ton of people out there that do iPhone repairs, and I give that business away all the time because I don't want to do it. And here's another problem we're going to run into. This is a little side note, but somebody was telling me the other night that they can't even do an iPhone 6 repair for what Apple can do it for.
Well, it's not only that, Jeff. There's also I also heard that people that are replacing screens with OEM screens, which I think a lot of the market is aftermarket screens from China. Yeah. Apparently, it's causing problems if you have the most up-to-date Apple iOS on your device. Apparently, you can stop things from working on your phone or your tablet. So because it breaks part of the security keychain or something. So actually, I'm glad I don't touch that stuff.
Yeah, that was just fixed. So
was it? Okay.
Yeah,
that scares me.
Yeah. Well, and let's face it. I mean, really, the manufacturers of these devices are in control.
Right.
Regardless, you don't own. Everybody goes, "Oh, I paid $1,000 for that phone." You don't really own that phone. Right. You're just kind of leasing it and using it for a period of time. And at some point, I mean, the reality is, if they want it or whatever, they can do whatever they want with that. Yeah, it no longer works because you can't get the latest iOS system in there or whatever, Windows or whatever. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's just the way it is. And when it comes to hardware, that's kind of the way it's going to be. Now, some businesses are able to exist like that, some aren't. But anyways, I think with that being said, the residential business side, Marvin, is there anything we haven't covered as far as, I just want to go into a little bit deeper dive and kind of let people know that there's many ways to do business, and it's okay to pick what you're good at, what you like, and kind of go down that route instead of being forced to do what you think you should do.
Right. I'll piggyback on what Don just said about, going into it slowly, doing what you're comfortable with. I mean, I just got a customer because a previous tech did not know how to work with their small business server, their network, and didn't do anything proper for them for the last 3 years. And they finally got fed up to the point where they called me and said, "Can you please come in and fix this?" And he was a guy who he was used to dealing with the small home office type deal where, at the most he dealt with 3 or 4 people in the network, and he would, be able to share a drive on a NAS or use everybody Dropbox as a server. And, that just did not work in this law firm with their software, with their server. I mean, there's no sense in having 10 people in an office in the same physical space sharing documents through Dropbox. And then they're wondering why their voice over IP wasn't working. And then they're wondering why their internet is slow when they're trying to file court documents. And then, even to the point where when I walked in and did my assessment, the front desk receptionist was trying to figure out why they couldn't scan to the copier. And she's basically pointing to a box, and she says, "Yeah, every time the scanner wouldn't go. We would get this device and reboot it, and sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. And so I finally looked at it, and I picked it up and said, this is an ATA device for a fax line that has nothing to do with your network and whether this copier can scan or not. And I said, why would you be, well, that's what he told us to do.
Wow.
And I had to say to them, and how long have you been doing this? Well, for about the last year. And I said, okay, for the last year, this guy has been telling you to do absolutely nothing.
Wow.
Now, I know the guy. He's a nice guy. But I don't ever want him touching a network ever again because he just doesn't know networks.
Right.
So he should stay off of them. So I would just really encourage, if you're at that point where you're trying to figure out residential or business, don't just do business because you think, as Jeff said, the grass is greener. You think that the money's there. You think that residual income is going to, take care of you. Do it because you know it. Do it because you like it. Do it because you're good at it. And if you're not, go someplace and learn.
Right.
Whether it's a school or whether it's finding another tech or company in your area that's willing to let you work with them part-time and maybe go on some jobs or something. But don't just do it just to do it and think that you can Google a few things and figure it out. That doesn't fly in the business world. This was a law firm that, they just had gotten fed up where, they were not able to file documents, and so they're missing, the judge is basically, sanctioning them, so that they couldn't get their work done, and that's just unacceptable in a business world. So
yeah,
sorry, I felt like I got a little soapy there, but that's just
it's true.
The frustration I have in going after technicians who, they might be good at fixing stuff, they might be good at web stuff, they might be good at, but if you don't know networking, don't do networking and make it hard for the rest of us.
Don't make Marvin's job harder where he's got to bring in a $10,000 tool to fix the problem.
And the other thing you might find in small businesses, it seems like most small businesses have somebody that they have some role in the business, and then they act as the internal IT geeky person, and sometimes they do a lot of things they shouldn't be doing, like when you don't have total control over the system, and and then you get out there and they're like trying to tell you, well, this should happen or that should happen. So that's another kind of a headache sometimes with.
I'm real nice when I say it,
right?
and I put a smile on my face, but I just tell them, keep your hands off my stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And usually, I have a firm belief. I can pretty much tell you anything I want, as long as I put a little smile and chuckle after it. You'll be fine. It'll be okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
And if you're not, I don't care. It doesn't matter. But no, truthfully, and I agree with what Marvin was saying too. I'll say this: there's a lot of people, as far as networking or working on a server, as far as Active Directory, different things. These things are not that hard. So, but you do need to kind of know the basics so you know what you're doing, where you can come into a business and you're not just going, how do I get there? You've got to know some of the basics on what to do. And again, there's a lot of online courses out there. There's a lot of schools you can go to that you can get that information. IT Pro TV or whatever. There's a lot of stuff that you can learn. Go ahead and take that time and invest in your business, especially if you want to go into the business aspect of it. Now, I think a lot of people probably have scaled up from where maybe they start off in businesses that maybe have 3 or 4 workstations, and then they might get to where they're at 10, and then 15, and then 20. And there might come a point where you go, this is exactly what I'm comfortable with. This number and below, I'll service. Everything outside of that, I'm going to send out to some other big company that's got a bunch of employees that can take care of it. And because it's a one-person show, this is what I can do. This is what time I have available to get this stuff done. And so I think with that, we've had a great show and great information. And you guys brought the goods again, so appreciate that. Don, if people want to find out more about you or ask you a question, where could they do that?
MyTechGeeks.ca.
Gotcha. And Mr. Marvin Bee, How about you?
maninthevan.net.
Awesome. Still can't get that .com, huh?
No. Nope.
I know we all tried. Anyways. All right. Mark your calendars. Toronto Unconvention, July 22nd through the 24th, 2016. We've got some good things coming for you, so definitely check that out. The link will be in the show notes. Come join us live for the Computer Repair Podcast every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnutz.com/Computer Repair Podcast Live. I know it's a mouthful, but the link will be in the show notes. Join in on the conversation by calling in live and hanging out in the chat room. We have audio available over at podnutz.com or subscribe using your favorite podcatcher. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Computer Repair Podcast. Send your questions and feedback to podnutz@podnutz.com. Or you can leave a voicemail at 1-888-697-0162. And I want to thank all of our Patreon supporters and give a shout out to our newest Patreon supporter, Chris Bell. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you actually supporting the show. You guys can support this show by going to patreon.com/Computer Repair Podcast. And I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast. Good show, good show. All right, we're still on the air for those that don't know. I say that every time, just because, I don't know what it is with these guys, but sometimes they just think we're off air and they just start cussing up a storm, and I don't get it.
Right.
No, I'm just kidding. Yes, one of the things I do love about all the guests that actually come on the show is that everybody's very respectful of each other, and we do poke fun, and we have a good time. But, yeah, it's all good fun.
Hey, the Toronto Unconvention, are they actually going to have something on the 24th, do you know, or is it actually definitely going to be on the 24th? Any idea?
So the 24th being a Sunday, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
There will be a portion of the day in the morning. We're trying to still get some of the logistics out, but yes, there will be some interesting topics that will be shared on that day.
We'll be doing labs that morning.
Labs, thank you. Yes.
Oh, labs. Okay. I'm debating whether or not I should book hotel rooms. Like, I know I can write it off, but I'm only about an hour drive. But with traffic, it can be brutal, right? Like it's heavy traffic at times. So I'm not sure if I should. The only thing I'm worried about is I'm going to have to be dealing with, I may have to be coming back anyway, to do work for businesses or something, right? Anyway.
Well, if all goes well, Don, I'll be doing a flute lab, so.
Oh, really? Cool.
Stay for Sunday for that.
Cool.
I'll bring the big boy with me.
Yeah.
He's talking about his flute, people.
Yeah. Well, I love the flukes. Like, I would love to have the Wi-Fi network analyzer, but I really see no justification for it at all. But it looks cool, And what I could do, it just seems like it's amazing, right? But I don't think I'd ever get any return on that.
Get to that point one day.
I will say this.
Someday, right?
Yeah, I will say this. I didn't think I'd get as much return, but once I got the tools, I found ways to use them.
Right.
So, but again, the Link Sprinter is probably the greatest place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Jumping up to the Link Runner, AT.
I thought that was the actual name. I'm like, Link Runner?
The Link Runner AT is probably a nice one to have, but that's a bit of a jump.
Yeah.
At $1,500. The Air Check is another one. I've got.
If you're in businesses all the time, though, and networking is a main part of what you support, $1,500 to me is not that much money.
But that's like 10,000 Canadian,
Well, that's true. You got to pay the Canadian tax, it's like the Apple tax, but different.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, but here's the thing. The Air Check. If you're dealing with an office and they've only got one access point.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to get the Air Check because all you're really doing is trying to get the most range and the highest signal. So the air check. What the air check is good for is if you've got an office with multiple access points and you're trying to make sure that you've got coverage, in one corner of the building, and you can take the air check and see how far that coverage goes before you've got to get another access point in there.
Mm-hmm.
And what it will do is it will tell you about the air quality around you. It'll tell you how many other access points are in the building that have nothing to do with the network that you're on. It'll tell you the signal strength of those other access points. It'll tell you what channels those access points. So that's the benefit of the air check. So if you're trying to evaluate, where a company says, hey, I'm standing right next to the router, why am I not getting good quality reception? Right. That's where the air check can come in and say, okay, well, here's why. You're standing right next to a microwave also.
Right. Yeah.
So, maybe that's not the best point, but I have been where a microwave's been on the other side of the wall in an adjoining suite that you had no idea about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the air check will come in and tell you you've got a ton of interference, so what else is around here?
Yeah.
Right.
There's someone like me where I do something like that maybe a few times a year. I just use like apps, right? To get the best I can out of it, just out of some network analyzer tool apps,
Yeah, there's a lot of those, and there's some free heat map things you can throw in a laptop and use. And I've done those. I've walked around the building with my laptop, but it's a lot easier to walk around with just a handheld analyzer.
Yeah. That's what I'm finding about this little Link Sprinter 300, man. This thing's so fast. It's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable what it can do.
Well, it's about saving you time, too, because, again, can we all solve these problems? Absolutely. You can use software, phone, apps, whatever. But the reality is, when you can plug a tool in and know exactly where that problem is.
Yeah. And it just looks so professional. You get sent an email or you see it on your screen, your phone, whatever. It just looks professional, right?
So Don, now I don't know if this will help you, but if you had the One Touch AT with you, if you'd have plugged that in, you would have seen all the routers from the One Touch.
That's cool.
So you wouldn't have had to even go to that closet. You could have told the person, okay, why do you have 4 routers here?
Yeah. What was that? What was the cost? Is it like $10,000 or something, or is it not that much?
Well, actually, there's a model that starts at $49.95.
Okay. Yeah.
And for people listening, that's $4,995.
Yeah. I mean, which is reasonable. I mean, you can write it off over time, right? I guess, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But the model that I have, it's up there.
Yeah.
Oh, we know. We know.
So I will say this. This won't go live, but I've been without it for about a week and a half.
Oh no.
Because it wasn't working properly, and I had to send it in for repair and calibration. So I could have. Now the warranty is only a year, and I've had it about a year and 8 months. So at the end of the first year, I should have done the gold support, which runs about $1,500 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I could have just sent it in, and everything would have been taken care of. And what I had done on all my other Flute tools, that I would just send it in every other year, as opposed to getting the support for it. So I just sent it in, and so I just invested an additional $1,900 in my tool.
Yeah. I hear they're actually pretty tough, though. The Flute tools, like you can drop most of them and probably not hurt them and stuff. Yeah. Yeah,
they're good. But they just, it needs to be calibrated every now and then. They also did a software update, so I've got some more reporting capabilities, which that alone, I mean, the PDFs that it generates are just phenomenal, so I can just forward reports. I just did one actually on Friday where I was able to, even though we were doing an ISP cutover, I had a similar situation that I had a couple months ago where we hooked up everything, and all of a sudden they couldn't browse the internet. I had to get in there and test and show them that the DNS was wrong.
Right.
And basically saved the report and took it off a flash drive and threw it onto a laptop and sent it up to them, and had all of the network stuff on there.
If you fix the problem, it must be a fluke.
So.
All right, I think with that being said, we are going to go ahead and end off the live broadcast. Appreciate everybody coming out and sharing. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, come hang out every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a great week. Talk to you later.